We are going to go straight over now to talk about the royal family again, much to discuss, and a warm welcome to royal biographer Ingrid Seward. Good morning, Ingrid.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, there's quite a lot to talk about in terms of the royals, as there always is. I mean, what do you make of this series, The Crown? You know, in television terms, they have this expression, jumps the shark. It's when a long-running drama gets so desperate to do something new, it spills over into the ridiculous. Now, The Crown, the long-running series on Netflix about the royal family, in its final series, which is just about to be unleashed on an unsuspecting public, is going to feature the ghost of Princess Diana visiting both King Charles and the Queen. Partly, I gather, to discuss arrangement when she visits the then Prince Charles. She wanted to discuss, as a ghost, arrangements for her own funeral. I mean, this is partly bizarre and absurd, but I think kind of slightly insulting as well. Do the royal family really need to be subjected to this arrant nonsense?
Well, they don't need it. But you see, I thought in the very beginning, The Crown depicted things quite tastefully. And it actually opened up a lot of doors. People all over the world had no idea what the Queen's daily life was, what her background was, how she became to be Queen. And I think, funnily enough, it was a very positive, although, of course, the royal family didn't like it, because no one in that position would want to be portrayed in a way that wasn't accurate, and it couldn't be accurate. It's not a documentary. I think people thought it was a documentary, and that is the problem. Well, they certainly couldn't think it's a documentary now. So Diana appearing as a ghost just makes it, I think, ridiculous. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And I think it clung to some quite very, very good stuff. But I think, in my opinion, that's just sort of ruined all the good it ever did. And it's not, it's just tasteless, really. And it puts it into a sort of, like a comedy show, rather than something that was trying to depict a serious historical family.
Yeah. I suppose one good thing about this is series 6. We're promised it's the final series. I hope they keep that promise. Frankly, Ingrid, I always thought it was a bit overrated. I mean, people went berserk about it when it first came out. Marvellous, marvellous. But it was certainly, you're right, better when it started than the fashion in which it is ending. But in some respects, the poor old royal family, who have kept their silence as they're wont to do, never complain, never explain. If anyone asks them from now on, oh, well, how accurate was The Crown? The Crown was really accurate, wasn't it? King Charles or Camilla or whoever can say, I refer you to the Princess Diana ghost scenes, which, if you do accept that this was a fairly decent endeavour, dramatic endeavour at the beginning, is now undermined by this ridiculous sequence featuring the ghost of Princess Diana.
I quite agree, actually. I think that they've sort of shot themselves in the foot, but why would they care? It's that, they kept saying it's not a documentary, but, they knew perfectly well that people viewed it as the truth. And that's probably what they wanted, because it had more dramatic impact. But quite right. What was The Crown a good series? Well, look at the way it ended. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I think by doing this, they will have lost all the cred that they had already, which, was quite substantial. I mean, I know there were a lot of critics, but it did have, a bit of credibility. And people, as I said earlier, opened their eyes to things they didn't know about. And of course, there was a lot of rubbish in it. But there were certain parts that were very interesting.
I'll tell you, when I stopped watching, much to my wife's protests, well, she carried on watching, but I didn't, which was when the Queen took Margaret Thatcher on a hike over the moors and the hills near Balmoral, and Margaret Thatcher was dressed in her finery in high heels and a hat and a silk dress. I mean, that too was a bit shark jumpy, wasn't it?
Well, especially as the Queen was renowned for her politeness. I mean, the Queen is head of state, so she needs to make her prime minister feel as comfortable as she possibly could. And it's so bizarre and so impossible that she ever would have done that. That I agree with you. I think I lost it in those Balmoral scenes, which were, and then the other one, I think I lost it over the Prince Philip, really, because I think he was portrayed completely wrongly, especially when they did that sequence about him being at Gordonston School and being, responsible in a way for the death of his sister Cecile, because supposedly she was flying to see him at Gordonston. I mean, it was really unkind rubbish.
We're forgetting, of course, the notorious alleged talks between, was it John Major and was it Charles, about toppling Her Majesty to set up a new regime. I mean, again, another absolute absurdity, and it's gone further and further down that route. And I agree with you, Ingrid, it has completely undermined itself. And frankly, I never liked it. I never liked the idea of it. I don't think it was fair to that. I'm not a massive royalist, but, the royal family are human beings. They don't deserve this. They don't deserve to be, the subjects of a kind of pantomime on TV. So I'm glad it's ending. Let's talk about something arguably more serious. I think the King and Prince William in particular, and indeed the Princess of Wales and Camilla, have distinguished themselves in terms of their response to the Middle East, what's going on in Israel. And both, by the way, I think pointedly, sending a message to the BBC by saying that what Hamas did was an act of terror. These were acts of terror. Both Charles and William and Kate and Camilla said acts of terror, which the BBC won't do. I thought that was pointed. Did you?
Yes, absolutely. I think, I mean, we're not political, but it was an act of terror, and they said it instead of pussyfooting around it. They said it, and I mean, Prince William went there in 2018, I think, and he met Netanyahu, and he went to the Wailing Wall, and then Prince Charles, as he was then, went 2 years later. And I believe that now as king, that King Charles as he is now, has spoken to the Israeli Prime Minister, and they're very involved with it. And I noticed recently that all these global disasters, they are sending quite positive messages from the King and the Queen and from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Whereas the late Queen, she did send messages of condolence, but they were very bland, because that's the way that her government, remember, as head of state, not as a personal queen, that's the way her government wanted it to be. But I think because Prince of Wales is younger, they feel that he can have a bit more of an input into it himself. And the King has always been a very, very sensitive feeling person, and he wants to get that across.
Meanwhile, Prince Harry and Meghan, they issued a statement saying that they stand against all acts of terrorism and brutality. Well, we're all supposed to stand against all acts of brutality and terrorism. Why do you think they didn't actually specify the act of terrorism that everyone's talking about, which happened last Saturday when Hamas invaded Israel and committed appalling tragedy? Why appalling atrocities? Why are they not specifying what they're talking about here?
Well, I can't be, I'm certainly right about this, but I think that their office, Archwell, and their PAs and their hundreds of people that appear to be working for them, put out these very bland statements. If you look back, there's a lot of weird statements they put out which actually don't mean anything to us. When you look at it, it's sort of gobbledygook.
Yeah,
but they seem to like pussyfooting around. They want to keep everybody happy, which I suppose is the Californian way, and they're deeply embedded in the psyche of California, as they should be, because they live there. And I think this is how they deal with things. They don't ever say anything specific. Well, Harry does, of course, in his book, but I mean, since the publication of Spare, which is, last January, they have been quite cautious about what they said.
A quick last question. Why, when they visited Manhattan this week, Ingrid, do you think that Harry and Meghan felt the need on a 200-yard journey to attend a mental health event? Good for them for going to that. But why do you think they felt they needed a 7-car convoy to travel 200 yards in New York?
Well, I think it's frankly ridiculous, but we don't know. Maybe there's a lot of terrorist threats. Maybe their lives are being threatened constantly. We know that Harry is very, very conscious about security, and it is, we never get to hear about exactly what the threats are, and it is possible. But I mean, I would frankly think it's completely ridiculous. I mean, it's as many as the President of the United States, so they seem to have a very inflated idea of their importance. But having said that, there might be all kinds of threats on their lives, and American security is very different from ours.
All right, Ingrid, totally agree with you. Ridiculous. 7 cars, not necessary. Great to talk to you, Ingrid Seward.
Thank you.
Royal biographer there.